Good afternoon, and welcome to our presentation on Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations Business Edition. We've got quite a few people on the call today, so we are going to use the question and answer component that is part of the GoToWebinar system. So if you've got any questions, feel free to type them out there, and I will answer them as we go, or at the end there'll also be an opportunity. So I will get started with a brief PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll dig into the software. Here's our agenda for today. We are looking at Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations Business Edition. We'll talk a little bit about what it is, look at the user interface, general ledger. We'll go through a little bit on the purchasing cycle, a little bit on the sales order cycle, inventory, and then talk about additional modules that are part of the package. My name is Marcus Haug. I'm the Managing Director at Boyer and Associates, and I've done quite a few implementations of ERP systems and have helped out on a couple of our Dynamics 365 implementations. So I will be guiding us through the product today. Boyer and Associates, we are an award-winning Microsoft solution provider helping small and mid-sized organizations through the Midwest, primarily in the Central Time Zone, although we've got clients outside of that, implementing and supporting cost-effective ERP management solutions. And we focus on the Dynamics product suite with Dynamics SLGP, NAV, and Dynamics 365 Business Edition. Boyer and Associates was founded by Jack Boyer in 1994. We have about 325 clients. Again, we do have clients from New York to California, but most of them are in the Midwest, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, and North and South Dakota, Texas, and Missouri. We have about 20 staff right now. Actually, I think we're at 19 right now, and we are a Microsoft Gold certified partner. Core values that we have at Boyer and Associates, we are about team, trust, effort, attitude, and meaningful relationships. We want to be people that and consultants that you can trust. We want to give forth 100% all the time, no matter what we're working on. We want to maintain a positive attitude. That's a big one. Oftentimes, implementing systems and supporting systems can be challenging. So we want to keep a positive outlook and a positive attitude with everything we do. And then we want to have meaningful relationships. We look at relationships with our business partners as well as our clients with a long-term view, not a short-term view, but a long-term view. And we actually have some clients that have been with us from the very beginning. When Jack started the company, they are still clients today, and they're still running a Dynamics product. So that is the type of relationship we want to maintain with the clients as best we can. We are about helping you as a client resolve problems. So oftentimes we're about eliminating islands of information. We really do want to make our clients as self-sufficient as possible. So we are going to show you how the software works, why it works. We tend not to configure stuff in a black box and then sort of hand it over to you. We want you as a client involved along the way. What we found in terms of long-term relationships is the more self-sufficient our clients are, the better relationships we have. So do we do support? Absolutely. Are we around to help? Absolutely. But we think that our clients are the best when they are as self-sufficient as possible, knowing how this system works, what are the feature functionality of the system. So we are about educating our clients as best we can. And we want to help think through process improvements. Oftentimes those are software-enabled process improvements, meaning that we want to leverage the application as best as we can. Products and services that we cover the ERP products of Dynamics, Dynamics GP, SLNav, and Dynamics 365 Finance for Operations Business Edition. That's a long product name, but in the Dynamics 365 family, there are several products. So we just want to make sure we're dealing with the right ones. So if you go online and look at feature functionality of Dynamics 365, you do need to dig a level deeper and see which specific product are you talking about in Dynamics 365. I have a lot of questions from people when they look at the sales or they look at the enterprise edition and say, well, that feature is there or that add-in is there. You need to be, again, very specific about the edition of the product you're looking at. Services that we provide: project management, implementation, supports, and then we do integrations, customization. We do management report writer training, which is offered really just with the GP and SL product lines. And then we do report development. We have a BI practice that's part of our group that does work with Power BI, Jet Reports, and BI 360. Okay, that concludes the PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to get out of PowerPoint and we are going to dig into the product. 1 second here. Give me 1 second, I'll be right back. Sorry, I'm using a headset today, and I just had a little problem there I had to take care of. So, all right, so we are in Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. And as you can see, this is a web-based product. So we are in a browser looking at the finance application. So let's talk a little bit about sort of what does it mean that it's a cloud product? What does it mean that Dynamics 365 is in the cloud? So obviously it's in the browser, but in terms of hardware infrastructure that you would need in-house or in a hosting environment, there is none. So the product is running in what they call a multi-tenant environment with Microsoft hardware on the back end, which means that Microsoft is maintaining the hardware, you're not. There's no investment for software or hardware, not using, let's say, server licensing. None of that is an issue. You are hosting the product, or actually it's running as a SaaS product, software as a service. So the other thing that a pro that you're looking at in terms of a cloud application is that hardware maintenance, upgrades, software maintenance, patches, all that sort of stuff is done by Microsoft. So as an end user, you don't have to, take your system down to do an upgrade. I don't need to worry about patches that need to be applied. Microsoft maintains all of that and will update the system on a periodic basis. Right now, Microsoft is updating Dynamics 365 every 4 to 6 weeks on about that cycle. And what you're getting is some new features, you're getting some fixes maybe, new functionality of the product, and that just happens automatically for you. And Microsoft does maintain a website that tells you features they're working on, features they're released, new training, etc. So that's kind of the product that you're looking at, and what does it mean by cloud? Some cons with that is it's not on premise. So if you're accustomed to, let's say writing reports and that sort of thing, and hitting the database directly, that's not really an option for you with a SaaS product. So Microsoft is maintaining the database, but that also means that you don't necessarily have direct access to it. So you would need to use a product or an interface with Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations to get to your data. So it's not saying you can't get to it, it's just how you would get to it would be a little different. The other thing is that it's obviously it's an internet connection dependent application. So probably not that big of a deal for most people today. You've got an internet connection from your office to obviously to the internet. But if that connection goes down, you will not be able to access the application. The plus to that is anywhere that I do have an internet connection, I have the application available to me. So if I'm in a hotel, if I'm at home, if I'm on the road someplace, I have access to the application via the internet. I also have some built-in apps that are available to me. So you can see right now I'm using Edge. In terms of a browser, I've run Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, obviously with Edge, with Chrome, IE, Firefox, Opera, and Safari. So all of those applications have, I've run without any issue. All right. In terms of customization, so that could be a con. Microsoft continues to develop out the applications so that there are more and more extensions that are available to you. So what I'm going to do a little later in the presentation is show you some extensions that are available. But customizations are done through extensions. So if you're familiar with other ways of doing modifications, this is the way you do it. Basically, what happens is a customization is encapsulated as an extension. The extension is then applied to the tenant, and then it works with your version of Dynamics 365, even though you're in a multi-tenant environment. As Microsoft updates the application, that happens sort of behind or underneath the extension that's been applied to the application. All right, in terms of licensing, so a traditional ERP system, I would purchase a software license and then pay maintenance on that license. In this environment, I pay per user per month for the ability to access the application. That is a named user license. Just want to talk about that, although licenses can be moved between users. So you sign up and buy 4 licenses, and you assign those then to 4 named users within Dynamics 365. If you want to move a license to another user, you can do that, but it is an admin function to move that license. But again, it's per user per month, and you've got the ability to add users as you need to and take users away. So it's, again, a little different than an ERP system. Most ERP systems, once you buy the user, you've got those forever. Not so in this environment. Okay, so let's move into the application. So I'm logged in, again, in a browser. And I'm in Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. So when I log in, my user is in a company, and that's this bold area right here. So Kronos USA is the company that I'm logged into. And then just above that, it says Business Manager. And what Business Manager is the role that I'm currently logged into within Dynamics 365. And what that role is going to do is it's going to dictate what menu ribbon across the top I have, what menu I have on the left-hand side, and then it's also going to dictate what shows up in my role center through the middle of the application. So let's talk a little bit about each of those pieces. First, the ribbon across the top works just like any other Office application. You're going to see multiple tabs show up, and that ribbon is going to change based on where I am in the application. So in my main role center, these are sort of global functions, although they don't need to be. You can see that I can access vendors and customers directly from here and also enter transactions. But as my role changes, you're going to see those will be functions that apply more to specific roles within the organization. So I'm going to log in a little bit later as a sales order processor, and you'll see that that's going to be more broad functions. The menu across the side, so we've got a larger menu as well as a smaller menu. So I can come in here and say finance. What's going to happen then is my menu on the left-hand side will change to finance functions, and then you'll notice the role center goes away, and I'm going to be, in this case, on the general journals list. If I want to go back, I can click on the home menu, and that takes me back to my main role center. All right, this little blue dialog box, this is a message system within Dynamics 365. So this could tell me the customer's over the credit limit. This one happens to tell me Dynamics Reports is not activated. Do I want to set it up? It could tell me that a particular item has reached its reorder point. A lot of messages that could show up in this in that little blue area. Okay, this larger activity section, let me explain a little bit what this is about. So you could think of it as a dashboard, although I think that dashboard term means something a little different than what this activity shows up as. So these activities allow me to monitor things or monitor transactions within my database. So as my role changes, these activities or these queues will also change. So the ones I have tell me how many quotes I have, how many orders, how many invoices. So it's doing a transaction count. This queue could also filter or restrict the transaction count. So for example, if I'm in an accounting role, I have a queue that says the number of purchase invoices that are due or past due for payment. If I'm in a warehouse worker or the sales order processor role, there's a queue that says sales orders that should be shipping today or sales orders that are delayed. Receiving function may have a queue that says expected purchase orders today. So it's telling me and helping me monitor my system. Not only does this give me information, but I can click into it and actually get to that information. So if I click on it, in this case, I'm looking at my orders. So this is just a list of orders. If it was a list of expected PO receipts, for example, though, I could click that queue. It's going to give me the list of expected receipts. So I don't need to sort of navigate the system. If I'm a warehouse operator, I can just click on there. There's my expected receipts. I can find the one I need and process the transaction. So again, giving me information about it, but it also helps me navigate the system. You notice these are green. I can set queues to have a visual warning on them. So they could be green, yellow, red, neutral, which would be no condition, as well as gray. So I've got several places or ways I can monitor those. And what I can do then is have a condition set to say that if I've got any delayed sales orders, maybe those turn red, or maybe we're allowing some delays. So we say, well, if there's 4 or 5, that's okay, but more than 6, I want red. Then everybody in the organization that would have that queue can see, well, now we've reached a red condition for some reason, and we need to deal with that. I'm going to just close this. Okay, so we might need to deal with that. So that's what activities do. And again, these also can total. So this happens to show you sales for the month. So we're not having a great month right now, $1,614, and it's the 22nd of February. But anyway, you can total things. Over to the right here, this is a section called business assistance. And the idea behind these business assistants is to allow end users, they help implement sections of the system, but they may also help answer questions. So for example, getting started with Dynamics 365, this is going to be sort of a wizard-based process that you can walk through as an end user. Warehouse management is really going to be more of a help system. So they view help. They could be viewing videos that Microsoft has published. They could be online documentation, or they could actually be a wizard that would help you set up or configure a particular area of the system. These continue to evolve and improve, I think, as Microsoft continues to build out Dynamics 365. Okay, next section here is favorite accounts. So there's several favorites that I can have set up within the system. Favorite accounts is one of them, but I can have favorite items, customers, vendors, as well as jobs. So there's a full project accounting system module within the application. We're not going to really look at that at all today, but there is one there. So this allows me as an end user to monitor certain records. Instead of looking at all accounts, I want to look at a set of records. So when I worked for a nonprofit, I was a CFO for a nonprofit, and I used to 3 times a week get a flash report that showed me my cash balances. So I would be looking at our savings, our checking, what sort of payables, receivables we had outstanding, what did a line of credit look like, et cetera. So this could essentially replace that sort of flash report where I can say, well, I want to monitor my cash and my AR and AP position. That balance is a current balance of those GL accounts. So as transactions are processed, these accounts are going to be updated live. So if someone was behind the scenes posting cash receipts or posting a check run, I would see these numbers update. So I would always have at my fingertips information about my, in this case, cash position. You notice these are blue fields, and those are hyperlinks. So those are going to allow me to click into and get more information. So in this case, I'm looking at GL information. So it's going to give me information about the types of transactions or the transactions that have been posted that make up the balance of that. If I had customers, I could look at customer balances, vendor balances, etc. Okay, over here on the left, I've got a trial balance. What this is an example of is financial information or financial reports that I could also display within my role center on my dashboard. So if I look at total revenue, expenses, margins, et cetera, as we go, and you notice these are financial periods, these numbers are also blue. So I can drill into it. So total revenue would show me now GL information related to this transaction. I can look at my net change on income and look at the transactions that now make up the balance of that account. I'm going to pause here a little bit and explain some additional functionality in terms of navigating or researching information within the system. So that's this navigate button up here on the top left. That navigate button, what this allows me to do is if I select a record and click that, I'm now looking at all of the transactions that are associated with the one I'm looking at. So I can see the posted sales invoice. The second line here shows me the GL entry, tax, customer ledger entry, which is dealing with like payment application or returns and that sort of thing. And then the detailed customer ledger looks at my application of those transactions. You notice these are also blue, which tells me that I can drill into that information. So if you remember on our role center, we started with a revenue balance. We looked at the detailed transactions. Now, as an end user, I have a question about this particular invoice. I can click on this GL entry, and this gives me the entire journal entry that was created from the invoice. And then, from my role center, I was looking at a particular account balance. The idea behind here is this is giving me the ability to navigate through and around the application to find out other information that I may want to research because of the revenue. Maybe I see a revenue, but really I'm curious about margin. Well, if this was an inventory related transaction, I would also have cost information here, and I could actually do margin research right at my fingertips as I navigate the application. I'm going to open up the posted sales document though, and I want to show a couple things here. So I can actually navigate then to the document as well as the journal entry information. Okay, so I can see really anything that I would want to see at my fingertips. Back over on the GL entry, I forgot to mention this. So this incoming document section over here on the left, I want to expand that. What that incoming document section allows me to do is on a transaction, so it could be an invoice, it could be a sales order, it could be a journal entry. I have the ability to attach a document, so it could be a PDF, Word document, Excel, spreadsheet, etc. And then that incoming document will be attached to any subsequent transactions as I navigate the system. So in the case of a sales order, I could attach the customer PO to the sales order, attach an image of it. When that order then ships and becomes an invoice, that document is attached to the invoice. And then when the journal entry is posted, the document is also attached to the underlying journal entry. So it's the same document, but it's attached to all subsequent transactions within the system. Again, allowing me to do a tremendous amount of research very easily as I navigate the application. Okay, back to my role center. Over here on the right, I've got this reporting inbox. What this allows me to do is to run a report that's in the system, and I can schedule it to run. So if I wanted to have an aged receivables report for some reason show up every single day, I could have it show up every single day in my report inbox. Okay, down here on the left, this is the first application that we're going to look at in terms of integration with Office, and this is a Power BI report that I created, and it's created in Power BI, looking at my Dynamics 365 data and then presenting the data back into Dynamics 365. So it's kind of a little bit roundabout way, but if you're using Power BI or if you haven't used Power BI, it's really a cool application. Allows me to do quite a bit of information, hovering charts, graphs, all sorts of different things that I can do, and then bring those reports back into Dynamics 365. And I'm going to show you a couple other places that they show up. All right, we had a question. Are there storage limits regarding how many documents you can attach in the system? Currently, there are no limitations in terms of data volume from a Microsoft perspective. So you could attach whatever you want. The key there is they are within the database. So I would need to be a Dynamics 365 user to view that application or to view that document, but there's no limits in storage. So the real limitation is like if I wanted to view it from outside of Dynamics 365, that wouldn't be an option. Okay, so there's a little bit on the user interface. I do want to show you the next thing, which is this personalize option. So what Microsoft has done in the latest release is actually allow you to personalize the application. So I can take my role center and I can actually move these activity sections. I can hide them. If I look at my favorite accounts down here, for example, I can take this and I can add additional fields. I could rearrange fields. Our columns in this report. I can do quite a bit of things. What happens then is I save this. If I say done, that saves my personalization back to the server, and then that just follows me. So anywhere that I would log in via the browser, that customization is gonna follow with me. And again, as we look at subsequent pages within the application, let's say journal entries and other things, I have that same custom personalization, I should say, available to me. All right, so I'm going to go down to my settings now, and you see this is a role, and I was in a business manager, and I'm going to go down here, and I'm just going to go in as the sales order processor. Click OK. I should have noted on that that setup. That's also where I would go to change companies. So Dynamics 365 is multi-company enabled. And I can also create intercompany transactions with the application. It's also multi-language enabled. So if I would go back to, I'll just pull that up quick so you can see it. So multi-company enabled as well as multi-language. So I can change my region and then have my language set up. Work date, I'll just talk to that. So everything in Dynamics 365 is posted based on a posting date, and that's set based on my work date. So I'm in a demo environment, so obviously my work date isn't right, but normally that work date would default to the current date. So all transactions that I enter are going to have a posting date of today. If I wanted to or needed to work, it's the 2nd or 3rd of February and I need to post a lot of transactions back to January 1, I can go there, change my system date back, and then all transactions would have that new date. So, okay, so I have a new role. You notice this is a sales order processor role. So this is now going to say sales order processor instead of business manager. You notice my activities are a little different, as well as my charts now are showing up. So I've got several charts that are available here. I've got orders until, delayed orders, as well as all orders in the system. And you'll notice that this is a little different than the Power BI reports, but I've got the ability to hover and find more information. They are different in the sense that I can click on that report and now navigate the system. So if I was looking for, open sales orders, delayed sales orders, whatever that might be, I can then click into them and get that more detailed information. This role center also has my items on it and my customers. So you can see my customers is going to show current balance. My items is going to show unit price. I guess I pulled quantity on hand on my last demo. I took that off, but quantity on hand would also be an option for me to see. Okay, so I'm going to navigate the system using the search window up here, and I'm going to go to chart of accounts. And we are going to start look a little bit at the general ledger and talk about how that's set up. So navigate to the chart of accounts, and you'll notice that I've got a list of account numbers. I'm just going to show the personalization here quickly so that you can see what can be done. So if I wanted to, let's say, add a field to this list, I click add a field, and now over on the right, I'm going to get all the fields that are available to me. And if I take this account category, for example, and I drag it on here, now account category is going to show up. I can say done. And I've modified my list view to show, in this case, account category. So again, these fields can be moved on and moved off as I would want to. A couple of things I can do with this list view. I can sort these. So if I sort ascending, descending on these, I can also filter. So if I click on here, you can see I can filter based on a particular field. I can also filter using the search button over here on the right. The interesting thing about the search button over here on the right is it's going to search all the visible fields that I have on the form. So it's going to search not only the description, but the type, the subcategory, et cetera, as I go through. So this filter would just filter one. All right, let's talk about the chart of accounts here. So I'm going to just drill into the chart of accounts. I should talk a little bit about how this page is constructed. So what I have is called fast tabs, and that's this blue section. So general, posting, consolidation, reporting, cost accounting. Those are fast tabs. Those can expand and contract to show me more or less information. Over here on the right now, I also have the show more or show less button. So I have basically 3 levels of information that I can show on any page to show a lot of detail or less detail. The nice thing about this is if I've got, using the personalization, if there's sections of the application that I don't use or I'm not going to use, I can pull those fields off the pages to really clean them up and streamline them. I can also add other fields that I may want on here to the page if they don't or aren't currently displayed. So a lot of options in terms of configuration. Let's talk about the chart of accounts themselves. So right now in my demo, I'm showing 5 numerical values for an account number. Dynamics 365 will do alpha, numerics, anything you really want for an account number. Wouldn't recommend doing that. I think just sticking with a numeric value for an account number is the best way to go. But if you do want to set up account numbers doing other things, you can. There's a name. There's an income and statement and a balance sheet setting in here. And what that does is that will dictate how the account either rolls over or doesn't roll over at the end of the year. So that's all that's really doing, the year-end process. I have an account category and a subcategory. What the account category is going to do is, I had a problem there. The account category is going to be a broad section of how the account is set up. So assets, liabilities, incomes, expenses, equities, etc. The account subcategory then is going to give me subcategories, and it's going to be the basis of my financial reports. So Dynamics 365 allows you, well, actually based on the account categories, it will maintain a balance sheet and income statement for you, but you can also create your own. So this account category would allow me to say, in this case, current assets, then I've got cash. You'll notice that this roll up then is a series of accounts that roll up into my cash balance. And then I've got this balance information, which is a current live balance on that account number. So that's what this account type subtype does. I've got a lot of other options on the GL that we're just not going to cover. Cost accounting, for example, there is a cost accounting module, so I don't have to muddy up my GL, but I've got separate functionality for that. We also have the same same module. Well, it's not the same module. We have another module for cash flow analysis. So cash flow doesn't sit in AP or AR or the GL. It's its own module. We can do full consolidations, intercompany, that sort of thing within the GL. And then we have the ability to do a bunch of posting rules here. These posting rules would allow me to post almost what looks like a one-sided entry, but it would automate the debit or credit offsetting. And then I also have the ability to do taxes on GL account numbers. So if I'm in a situation where I'm selling something, let's say in sales order, or I can use it on the use tax side as well. I can sell a GL account number just like I would sell an item and actually process sales tax against it. So kind of an inventive way to do it if there's some, I primarily see this for like service type things, but you can use it for quite a few things. Okay, so that's my GL account number. As I go back to the list, and I want to just go back to the list of the chart of accounts here and point out one more thing before we go. This list is going to give me more than just static information. So you can see that I've got a current net change, which is my current period net change, and then a current balance on that account. Again, these are blue fields, so they are drill down capable. So I can drill into the net change or the balance of this account and show more information. I'm going to talk a little bit about the close income statement feature here. So I would say that Dynamics 365 has a soft close, meaning that I can always make prior period as well as prior year entries if needed, and that's handled via security. So even though I've closed the period, it doesn't mean that it's unreachable. I can go back and make prior entries, and the system will roll forward my balances in my account. So it's not a hard close. Never go back to a prior year. I've always got the ability to go back. So in the same way, if you're in a distribution environment, you just keep shipping, receiving with your new month, and they will go in and do transactions in the current month, but yet I can, from a GL perspective or maybe APAR, I can go clean up the prior month. So I would say it's a soft close, both for periods and for year end. From a journal entry, I have obviously the ability to do standard journal entries. I can also do allocations, recurring, and reversing entries within Dynamics 365. So I'm not going to go through those, but they're set up that way. Okay, so after the chart of accounts, then what we have is dimensions. So dimensions allow me to identify essentially what most systems would call a sub-account or something like that. So I've got some 5 sample dimensions here. You actually create your own when you set up the system. So I've got a customer group, department, product line, project, and work product. So what these dimensions then are codes that get assigned to a line item at a detailed level. So for example, department. So I could have administrative department, a production department, a sales department, IT department, etc. When you notice our main account was just the main account, the 5 characters or whatever you have set up. So if I'm going to process an expense report for mileage, I would select my account number for maybe mileage expense, and then what I would do is I would select the dimension that associates with the department. What this allows me to do is tremendous flexibility. So most systems, when you set them up, we have to define, what's my sub-account or my segment structure going to look like. We do the install and we say, well, we want 3 segments, and we know the first one's department, the second one's product line. We're not really sure if or when we're ever going to use a third one, but we're going to put it in anyway, and we're going to default it to all zeros. Well, then when you post, let's say, a balance sheet transaction, all of us have an all zero segment structure to account for balance sheet items. Well, in the case of Dynamics 365, what you have are rules that connect dimensions to account numbers. So I could say for my cash account, well, it wouldn't really make sense to have a department for my cash account in most cases because it's a balance sheet item. Well, I can set up the system to say, do not allow a department dimension to be used on my cash account. But for something like mileage expense, no, actually I want to require a department. So in that case, I couldn't post the transaction without a department being designated on the line item. So dimensions get connected together with rules on my chart of accounts to then give me my detailed financial reporting. Dimensions can also be defaulted from other master records. So for example, I can default a customer group from the customer. So anytime I'm using a particular customer, the transactions are all going to have that customer group assigned to them. Same thing with product lines tied to inventory, etc. The nice thing about this dimensional setup is I can define things as I go. So if at some point, 4 or 5 years after implementing the system, we say, you know what, we want to finally track some internal projects. We want to know expenses based on a project category. I can create a project dimension and then use it where needed. I don't have to create sort of this segment that's going to go off indefinitely. I can just add to it. So I've got 2 what they call global dimensions. I have 6 what they call shortcut dimensions, and then I have really unlimited dimensions after that. So and the idea behind the shortcut dimensions and the global dimensions is really where on pages those dimensions are filled in or where they show up. So there's more functionality around the global dimensions, a little bit less around the shortcut dimensions, and then a little bit less on the other unlimited number of dimensions that you'd set up. I can also change those dimensions. So if I say that project is a shortcut dimension, but then later I want to pull it out of my shortcut dimensions and leave it as an additional dimension, I can actually make that change in the system and it'll roll through for me. Okay, that's what I want to show there. What I want to do is I want to go to a sales quote now, and we're going to start down the sales order cycle. And so I'm just going to pull up a sales quote, and we're going to just look at some functionality around the quote, how it's set up, and that sort of thing. First thing I'm going to draw our attention to is this gray box over on the right. And what this is a fact box. So as we've been navigating the system, you may have seen these fact boxes show up. Again, they're contextualized based on where I am. This is going to allow me more information about the transaction that I'm on. So on customers, vendors, all sorts of different places, I'm going to see these fact boxes. So right now I can see that if I go to my line item, I can see it's, there's my item number. I can see that there's 96 available. I can see quantity per unit of measure. Are there substitutions, etc. For example, on this 96 available, I can click on that 96, and now I'm going to get information about the availability of that item. So right now I can see, well, I just actually have 96 in current inventory. If I had other sales orders, other purchase orders, production orders, assembly orders, how I would make this item and however I would sell it, I would see that information here. And what I can do then is I can look at day, week, month, quarter, year, etc. And I can actually research then while I'm on the phone with the customer to say, well, when can I actually get this thing, or when do I anticipate getting it? Okay, so that's just some information that I can get about a line item. So I've got a header. Obviously, I have invoice details, so I can do full taxes. I've got shipping and billing information, so I can have multiple ship to addresses for a customer, etc. Let's talk a little bit about the line item itself. So obviously we can sell an inventory item. I also said that we could sell GL accounts. So the GL account is available there. So I can treat it just like an inventory item. I can sell quantities of a GL account number to do pricing, all sorts of different things. So pretty interesting way of leveraging that on a line item. If I want to sell a GL account, I would come in here and say GL accounts. Oops. Oh, I can't do it because of course I don't have it open. So I reopen my order. Say I've got a GL account. Now when I've got my GL accounts here, you'll notice my GL account lookups show up. If it's an inventory line, my inventory items show up. So these will dynamically change based on the type of line you're on, which is a nice feature. I also have the ability to look up by description if I want to, not just the number. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some feature functionality of a sales quote as well as the system in general. So I have the ability to set up locations. Dynamics 365 is a little interesting in that I don't need to set up locations. So I don't have to create a bogus location if I only have one. I actually don't have to populate location. I can leave it generic, blank. But I can set up as many locations as I would want. In coming versions, and in coming versions I say in about 2 months, the location functionality is going to be expanded to do full warehouse tracking. So bin tracking with zones, pick, pack, ship, directed putaways, directed picks, etc. So right now I just have the ability to put a location, but full warehouse management is coming next. I can set up a quantity. I can also set up a quantity to assemble. So in inventory, I have the ability to set up items with a bill of material. And the bill of material is, I would say, a little bit more powerful than a kit. So an assembly order is like a kit. It can be a multi-level bill of materials setup for it, but I'm either going to make that kit to stock or I'm going to make it to order. And what this assemble to order would allow me to do is if this was an assembly item, I could actually create an assembly order on the quote or on the sales order. Okay, so that's kitting. Again, coming in about 2 months is full manufacturing. So right now we have the ability to do assembly orders, which is, I would say, kits on steroids. I can have, again, multi-level sub-assemblies, bill materials, that sort of thing. It would allow me to make the thing. So I don't have routings, but I would have quantities and units to measure, labor, tracking, all that sort of stuff, but just not routings. Routings is coming, again, in about 2 months. Unit of measures, so within inventory, I can have multiple unit of measures, unit of measure conversions, all that's built into the system. Current unit pricing, have the ability to do all the pricing, price breaks for customers, quantities, promotions, all sorts of different things. Tax groups, so we do have full sales tax capabilities within the application. Sales tax can be on items, and also can be on GL account numbers. So that's a matrix that gets set up that says, is this customer taxable or non-taxable? Is the item taxable or not taxable? What kind it is, et cetera. And then I can set up all the sales tax I need to. There is also an extension available to Avalara. So Avalara provides sales tax, not only configuration services, but reporting services. All right, then I can set up line discounts and all sorts of different things. This assignment quantity, I do have the ability to do reservations in the system if I want. So if I want to reserve inventory, that's functionality that I can require, make optional, or disallow within the system. Okay, so from a sales order or from a quote, I can then create a sales order if I want to. I can also copy documents, etc. So I'm going to go into the sales orders next. And I'm just going to pull one up. And what you're going to see is that the sales order functionality looks exactly like the quote functionality. So that's important for training purposes. If I know how to enter a quote, I know how to enter a sales order. I also then know how to function with a sales invoice. So all three of those documents look and act the same, and they have identical functionality. There's some differences in terms of, let's say, how inventory is handled. So if it's a quote, I'm not reserving inventory off of a quote because I'd have to explicitly reserve it for a quote. It just doesn't inherently do it. If I'm on a sales order, that's going to be included as part of my demand process. So the system will recognize a sales order as a commitment from the customer. A quote would be an optional commitment, but it wouldn't have to be. And a sales invoice, I also transact inventory with a sales invoice. So what I get with a sales order is the ability to ship and then invoice. With a sales invoice, I only have the ability to ship an invoice in one step. Okay, so if I need a two-step process, then I'd use an order. One-step process, I can just use an invoice. I can mix and match when I use these transactions as well. So if I say I want to use quotes, I don't always have to. I don't always have to use a sales order. Everything always ends up as an invoice to actually move something. But I've got some flexibility there in how I would deploy the system or manage transactions within the system. Okay, just want to draw your attention up here to the top at this point, which is two sets of icons that show up here. So what I've got is the ability to do approvals in the system. So I can do transaction approvals. So if I want to approve sales orders, purchase orders, that sort of thing. I can also do approvals on master records. So if a customer credit limit changes, I'm going to flag that master record. You can't transact against it till someone approves it. Maybe it's a vendor with the address change, et cetera. So that's approvals. I also have the ability to integrate with Flow. So Flow is a Microsoft 365 Office application, and it allows me to create workflows. And in creating workflows, I can integrate or connect different and disparate applications. So Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations actually is exposed into the Flow configuration in Office 365. So for example, if my approval request, if the person that actually needs to do the approval isn't in Dynamics 365, I can have a workflow triggered through Flow that would maybe notify that user. Or for example, if I've got a text message that I want to send. So I can't do text messaging right now out of Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. I can do emails, but I can't do text. Flow has an integration with an add-in called Twilio. So Twilio is a service that can do text messages. So using Microsoft Flow integrating with Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, I could accomplish outgoing text messages. Flow also has integrations to things like Dropbox. So one client that I've seen using Flow within the application, what they did is if a new job or a new project was set up, they wanted a Dropbox folder to automatically be created that was associated with that job. They wanted a standard set of documents to be copied into that Dropbox folder, and then they wanted a link to that Dropbox folder to be sent to the project manager. So that type of functionality can be accomplished with Flow, again, using data that is, or using a workflow that's triggered within Dynamics 365. Okay, so that's kind of the sales flow. What I want to do then is I'm just going to go over to purchasing quick. And I'm going to pull up a purchase order. All right, so this is a purchase order. Again, we've got general information, we've got lines and details. What you're going to see is this mirrors the sales order process. So if I understand how sales orders work, I'm really going to understand how purchase orders work. It's just the inverse in terms of terminology, in terms of functionality, very similar. The nice thing about that is if you're training a user on how to use purchasing, they're going to really know how to use sales orders. So if your organization where you have users that play multiple roles, they do purchasing and they do sales, it's going to be a very quick learning curve with the application. You notice in terms of line items, I can purchase a GL item, a GL account, an item. A charge item is a little different. What that allows me to do is to set up some standard transaction processing, let's say like freight charges, that sort of thing. It also would allow me then to deal with landed costs. So in the case of an inventory item that I purchased, and I got a bunch of them in stock, and then I get a freight bill a couple days later or even a month later, I can take that freight bill and then apply it to the receipt, and it'll actually allocate those charges to my inventory item. So that's what the charge item can also do. All right, a couple of other things. Let's see, just to show you here. We've got the send option. And what this also allows me to do is to take and send electronic documents. In this case, a purchase order, but it also works on the sales order side. So I can email either as an attachment, I can embed the text within the body of the email, or do both. So that's configurable in terms of sending documents out, so acknowledgments or purchase orders, that sort of thing. I can also preview a report within Dynamics 365. So that's not available in all web-based applications, the ability to preview a report. That is available here in Dynamics 365. Drop ships. So we're on a purchase order. I do have the ability to do drop ships and special orders within Dynamics 365. So if I'm on a sales order and I need to create a drop ship PO, I've got functionality to link those documents together and then create the drop ship PO from my purchase order. Okay, so I'm going to close that out. From a purchase order, then once I receive it, it would become a purchase invoice. So you notice the terminology: sales invoice, purchase invoice, sales order, purchase order, all mirror one another. In terms of electronic documents then, so I can also do electronic payments from accounts payable. So if I need to do EFT to my bank, when I go to process my payments, I can create an EFT file and send that to the bank. Positive pay as well is available to me. All right, let's drop down to inventory. I want to talk a little bit about inventory. Actually, what I didn't show you before is on my customer record. I want to show you this Power BI report that I have set up. So this Power BI report over here on the right now, what that's doing is it's presenting a Power BI report, but it's also filtering based on the record that I'm on. So you notice that I'm on the Canon group. I get a chart for them. If I move down, I'm going to get a different chart depending on which record I'm on. So this is showing the ability to not only integrate Power BI, but filter based on the record that I'm sitting on. So some interesting functionality. All right, let's go down to items and look at the item configuration. Let's see. I'm going to pick up my Athens desk. Okay, so I've got the ability to set up basically user-defined item number, so alphanumeric, whatever you want to do. I also have the ability to set up a number series with my items. So if I don't want somebody to create their own item number, they just want to start at 1 and keep going, I can do that. I've got a description, a long description, additional descriptions. As we saw before, we've got the ability to do unit of measure conversions, all that sort of stuff. Attributes, I've got the ability to put pictures on it, but I also have the other ability to put other attributes on an item. So Size, color, style could be things where I want to track an item, maybe t-shirts, right? I've got a blue t-shirt, but I've got small, medium, and large. I can have attributes assigned to sections of my inventory. So if I looked at my quantity on hand, I have 10, but maybe I have 2 small, 2 medium, and 6 larges. Okay, I've got the ability to do different costing methods. So we have FIFO, LIFO, specific, average, and standard. Specific would be tied to serial lot tracking. So I can track cost to a specific serial lot if I want to. Posting allows me to then assign GL account numbers. This is where my taxes is taken care of. In terms of pricing, we showed you that I've got the ability to do special pricing, promotional pricing. I can do it customer specific, group specific, date restrictions, all sorts of things. I do have a full replenishment system available to me. So this one happens to be an assembly order. So this item is something I'm going to assemble. I do have the ability to say that I purchase it, I do a production order, or I do assembly order to replenish it. And then do I make it, in this case, because it's an assemble, I can make it to stock or make it to order. There is what they call a requisition worksheet. And what the system can do is look at demand within the application to determine when do I need to order or make something. So this replenishment system is what drives that. More functionality around replenishment is coming in about a month and a half with manufacturing. I do note that you can set up lead times. So lead times can be set up for vendors, for warehouses, and warehouse operations, so I can determine, well, if my lead time is 2 weeks from the vendor, but I need a day processing, when can I actually promise the thing to be shipped to my customer? So that's what it's using for that. All right, then I'm going to go down to item tracking. We do have the ability to do full lot serial tracking. And I'm going to just pull up this lot tracked one and just show you some options here. So for both serial numbers and lot numbers, these can be configured so that turning on serial numbers doesn't mean I can track serial numbers and lot numbers differently based on the item or the item group. So I could say I want to track a serial number from beginning to end. So as soon as a particular item hits my dock and every inventory movement, everything I want to do, I want to track a serial number on it, I can do that. I even can have predefined serial numbers that are created that I would have to select from. So in the case of, let's say, an assembly order or production order, I can have the system calculate serial numbers automatically and assign them to the items as they're created. I also then can just say that in terms of outbound serial tracking, I only want to track a serial number or capture a serial number at the point that I ship the product. So we worked with a client one time that had very expensive equipment that was serialized that they did repairs on. And what they were finding, or what they were thinking, is that they were sending these items out and they had customers, because they could buy them from different sources, they would have customers that were sending products back to be fixed that they didn't actually sell. So what they wanted, they didn't care about tracking serial numbers within the warehouse, but they did track it at the point of shipment so that they could validate the serial number if it was ever returned or needed to be returned for repairs. So it didn't muddy up my warehouse movements or my receiving process. All it did was say, I want to capture the serial number so that I've got record of it in case I have a problem. So that's just an example of how you can configure sales serial numbers as well as lot numbers on an inventory item to determine, what do I actually want to do with this thing, or what do I not want to do with it. Okay, in terms of additional modules, that's sort of a broad overview of inventory. So in terms of additional modules, I have talked about the finance options, which is obviously general ledger, but a separate cost accounting module and a cash flow module. There's also a banking module, so doing bank reconciliations, importing bank transactions, etc. That's all available within the application. And I also have a fixed assets module, full functional fixed asset module, different depreciation methods, automatically creates my journal entry for me at the end of the month. I can have multiple books, very extensive fixed assets module. I also have, as we showed, inventory with assembly orders. Production orders and manufacturing is coming, so that's slated, and I'm going to say somewhere in the April timeframe that that functionality be available. And I do have full job functionality today. So with a job, I can create a job or a project. I can assign tasks. I can capture time. I can issue POs to jobs. I can issue inventory to jobs, and I can do full billing within the application. So that's currently available today in Dynamics 365. All right, next thing I want to do is just talk about extensions. And I told you that extensions were my way to add additional functionality, essentially extend functionality to the application. I have the ability to also purchase extensions. So here's a couple that are in here right away. PayPal is a standard extension that's available. A QuickBooks migration is an extension that's available. But if I go out to the marketplace, what I can do is I can see what extensions are available to me. Now, you need to make sure that you're on Business Edition Finances, which is over here on the left. I've got selected. So you need to make sure you're in the right area of Dynamics 365. But then these are all of the extensions that are currently available to me. So a couple that I'm just going to point out, Avalara, which is the sales tax, Charge Logic payment. So if I don't want to use PayPal, Charge Logic also has a payment gateway that I can use. There's a Ceridian payroll connection. There's some credit management. There's some commission modules that I can add on. Let's see, there's GP and SL data migration. So if you're a current Dynamics user, there's built into the application the ability to convert master data for GP and SL. Microsoft is maintaining those. Actually, Microsoft is maintaining the GP one, and then Plumline is maintaining the SL one. But more functionality is being added to those extensions all the time. So their goal is to do some historical data conversion through those extensions. That's not, I don't think that's available at this point, but they're adding that. Master records and open transactions are available to me. There's LS Express, which is a retail application that's available to me. Here's the integrations to Power BI. We already talked about the PayPal one. So just examples of extensions that are available to me. Santa Commerce is actually an extension that will work with websites. So there's two of those available. Santa is one of them, and then there's another one here too. I can't find it right now, but there's two that will integrate with websites for you. So if you want to do a website component, you can add those to your system as an extension. So again, the extension, I go in there, I install it. It takes about 10 minutes, most extensions. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer for it to do the install, but it does it behind the scenes for you. And then it just becomes available within the application. There's also an Outlook customization, or actually an Outlook integration that's available to me. And what that allows me to do is actually integrate customer and vendor information into Outlook. So if I have a customer or vendor that sends me an email, I get a little pop-up dialog box that shows up within an Outlook. It could be their web Outlook or Outlook on the desktop. And I can see history and reporting about that vendor or customer, but I could also create purchase orders and sales invoices and purchase invoices from within Outlook. So some really interesting additional functionality that's available. All right. So what's on the horizon? If you go to look at the roadmap for Dynamics 365, you'll see that there's a lot of functionality that Microsoft has slated to be added to the product in the next couple of months. So what we're going to see is full distribution manufacturing, which is a big deal. So the ability to do warehouse management in terms of pick, pack, ship with directed, bins, putaways, all that sort of stuff, as well as manufacturing. So we're talking about production orders, routings, all that sort of functionality. There is also coming a service module series. So allowing me to do, if you think HVAC kind of concepts where I can sell an item, I can do warranty work on it, either bringing it in, or if I send people out on site to do warranty work, I can bill for it, I can bill maintenance revenue, all that sort of stuff. So that's also coming in future versions. So we've hit our 2:30 timeframe, which was when we wanted to conclude. So if you've got any questions, feel free to type those in. I would be happy to answer those questions for you. In addition, I've got some a little bit of information here. I got to get down there. I started at the beginning again. I should have done that. Okay, we do have a couple of options in terms of implementation. So what we're looking at is essentially two options for implementation of Dynamics 365. So we have a fixed fee pricing option. So what that would do is for a fixed fee, we will come help you get the system configured do some training, and you're ready to go. So depending on how complex your environment is, that might be an option. We also do full implementations of Dynamics 365. So that would be a detailed project plan, much more extensive type implementation. What we're seeing is that this product is extremely elastic. So it works well with very small users, 1-2 users. We've got clients that are at that level right now. And then it also will scale to a fairly large number of users. So again, in terms of implementation, we do fixed fee pricing and with implementations, or we can do full implementations. So if you've got questions, feel free to email me or call me. Email is probably the best thing. Or if you've got questions before we end too, I'd be happy to answer them in the question dialog box there. I'll just wait for a bit to see if anybody else has any questions. Oh, can we get a copy of this demo? Yeah, I think Katie is on, and I think that's right, Katie. Do we send him a copy of it? I think we can. So
yes, they will get that tomorrow afternoon.
There you go. So Katie, yep, Katie, I'll make sure you get a copy of it. Okay, well, thank you for joining us today. Again, if you've got any questions, feel free to email me. Otherwise, I hope you have a great afternoon.